Here's to a new year of reviews. It's the New Year's, even though this episode aired almost a week after the turn of the year. But Japan celebrates it for like a week or so, so it kind of works. Yeah. We've already read all the Star Twinkle spoilers, Hana. You don't have to be such a shill. We actually opened the episode at Homer's house? And Hana was just walking around in a wedding dress for some reason that probably won't play any sort of significance in the story. Amongst the flaming paintings, she knows Eugene Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People. A painting of the Lady Liberty we all know, and kind of overglorified in Ghostbusters II, leading her followers to a hopeful future. But, in the eyes of Georgie Boy, she was ultimately a false prophet as her brilliance eventually faded, leaving nothing in its place. Yep, definitely Homer's house, just as depressing. And after almost forcing me to use another Hansen clip, Hana thankfully woke up from what seemed to be just a dream. Though, interestingly enough, she seemed to cry at the exact same time as George.
Coincidence? I think not!
Later that day, the Precure celebrate the New Year's with all of their friends and family, including the ex-Cryasu guys, and one of the best damn characters in the show, Granny Kikuko. Again, it just amazes me how 17-year-old Inoue manages to pull off such a believable elderly woman voice like here and in Sinful Gear G. Yeah, so I'm also a bit of a shill, whatever. Later, they were going to have some osechi or New Year's breakfast at the Nono residence. But before they could dig in, Hana's dad, good gravy, did this guy get even bigger? You could hang posters for the next season on this guy, for goodness sake. Anyway, Mr. Nono realized they were out of soy sauce, so Hana decided to make a quick market run. On her way there, she made a quick detour to pick up some tickets for her school's band concert. George, please stop this. I'm running out of Predator clips. Yet, in spite of rightfully refusing gifts from this dude, he still felt like monologuing. According to Georgie Boy, he wasn't the one who originally stopped the flow of time in the future, but rather, every living being on the planet as the influence of Toge power spread, as he revealed through some very Fallout-looking imagery. Let me guess, everyone was upset that they got gypped on their bags and their rum. No, but seriously, he came from a point in the future where all hope and therefore all Asu power had faded. So he went back to an earlier point in time, before it all ended, in order to preserve the happiness of everyone on his blank canvas. In short, the dude's a bit of a negative Nancy, heck, even Dr. Trom could attest. So, the guy's pessimism was so strong it brought you guys down to the same level as him? You know, I just mentioned Fallout, but maybe this guy really is a product of the Bethesda workforce. This led into, well, honestly, one of the best moments in this final arc, as Hana and George argued over which of their sides would win out in the end. Hana pointed out how they managed to generate Asu power from even the Cryasu generals when they were at their lowest. But George countered with the undeniable truth: humans will always have the capacity to hold malice. This did end up reawakening some of Hana's bully trauma for a moment. While this season still has a lot of problems, at least for the most part, they got the pink right. And before he retreated, George did hint at some other connection between him and Hana that's at least a little less squeaky. The next day, the Precure were enjoying the aforementioned concert until... Yeah, you know, this scene would be a lot more effective if one of your C-list employees had already done it earlier this season, but let's not dwell on that too much, shall we? And yeah, apparently that hologram we still made was now real all of a sudden. I mean, I guess George is using it as his avatar now, but is that really the design you want to go with, especially those teeth? Well, anyway, the Precure made their way to Krause's new location, near the beach. Ooh, you're just asking for all kinds of health violations with that. And appropriately for a final battle in a toy production, they fought off an army of Monster of the Week level enemies. To try and prove his point, George tried to first take out the head of this team, but again was denied, leading them to... guys, you really shouldn't be using your finisher so early into the climactic fight, because that's usually a... defeat flag. Yep, George just turned all of his offices into his giant avatar and took Hagotan. With that, the episode ended with Risto and Bishin arriving as the Precure's final obstacle before they could confront the literal embodiment of the Dark Tomorrow. While the many problems of this season are still very much present, the main protagonist and antagonist are at least holding it up, though one is doing a little more legwork than the other. As I said, I really enjoyed the elevator scene between Hana and George. Not just because it was a good showing for Hana, proving both her worth as a Precure and as a leader, but also because they didn't drag it out more than they needed to. Hana just rejected his reality and substituted her own. Now, you could argue for the sake of drama that they should have at least had her blue screen a little, but I would counter by saying A, we've already gotten more than enough of that during this final arc, and B, Hana herself has already done it at least twice. While the additions of some parts of her backstory are a little iffy, Hana overall has had the most solid and consistent character arc in this show, with her still acknowledging the pains of her past. Trauma isn't something that just goes away, but she no longer lets it define her, which is important for this season as she is one half of the main conflict of it. She and George represent two opposing ideals, progression and stagnation, where to take their chances and move towards a dubious future, or stop it all and preserve its beauty eternally like the flowers George tried to give to Hana. On paper, both sound like valid arguments, though we know who's going to win out in the end. Yeah, George, while not the worst Precure final boss ever, is still somewhat faltering due to all the repetitive monologues. We get it, you're a nihilist. How about you at least sound a little more motivated? Again, I'm still at least interested in seeing where this rabbit hole leads, but I'm also hoping things don't completely fall apart by the end. As we can clearly see, George has some more personal motivations behind his actions. Still, things are moving at a much better pace now, and while this has been a bumpy ride of a season, I do agree with Hana that we should at least see this out until the very end. Over the Christmas holiday, as I mentioned, I managed to post my review for Symphogear G, as well as my early thoughts on the staff and cast of the upcoming Star Twinkle. Which, by the way, this episode also happened to include a teaser trailer. Just gonna give my quick bullet points for these few seconds. The animation and backgrounds look really good, as they should for a first episode. The little bit we saw of Hikaru's transformation looks awesome so far. I still love those Saturn buns. That kind of looks like a Kamen Rider pose. And while she sounds a little nasally, I kind of like Amy Naruse's performance of Hikaru. I think part of that comes from the fact that she sounds a lot like Sora Tokui.
Anything
that reminds me of Japanese Applejack is an automatic win in my books. I've also been asked to look at stuff like the new toys and interviews with the voice actresses, which I might do, but right now I want to concentrate all my creative juices on my Doki Doki review. Spoilers, it's going to involve a lot of references to one of my favorite Kamen Rider series ever. Anyway, look forward to it, and if you still feel it, you can follow me on Twitter for regular updates, as well as Instagram, where I mostly just post pictures of my figure collection. I'm particularly proud of this latest post featuring the Jansport Fate atop a couple of Transformers. And with all of that, farewell for now, my friends, and just so that we're clear, this is actually iced coffee, not rum. Just thought I'd mention that in order to appease my YouTube overlords. I'm keeping it family friendly, don't worry.